When we look at the headlines, it's so easy to just dismiss famous celebrity deaths as these isolated incidents of excess. Just another rock star living too fast, right? But today, we're doing a deep dive into the shocking, systemic patterns behind these tragedies. Because when we actually structure the data and look closely at the evidence, a much, much darker reality emerges about wealth, ultimate access, and honestly, the sheer fragility of life. Okay, let's start with a cold open. Imagine you're staying in a hotel room and everything just starts to spiral out of control. You'd call for help, right? Well, let's look at what happens when nobody can. Take the incredibly specific details of October 16th, 2024. 31-year-old Liam Payne, formerly of One Direction, checks into the Casa Sur Palermo Hotel in Buenos Aires. He's just there to see a former bandmate's concert. Totally normal stuff. But by the afternoon, his behavior escalates rapidly. Hotel staff are getting really worried, and the manager is watching this whole thing unfold, knowing it's about to go very, very wrong. Right around 5 p.m., the hotel manager makes a totally panicked 911 call. On the recording, he's saying they have a guest who is completely overwhelmed by drugs and alcohol, literally destroying the room. And then he notes this one crucial, terrifying detail. There is a balcony. From the moment of that call, it's a 7-minute tragic countdown. At 5:07 p.m., Liam Payne falls from the third floor. And despite emergency responders getting there incredibly fast, he's pronounced dead at the scene. When police finally enter his room, it's basically a war zone. We're talking a smashed TV, scattered foil, white powder, drug paraphernalia everywhere, and a half-empty champagne glass. Millions of fans watched as this single hotel balcony became the absolute center of a massive global conversation about addiction and isolation. Section 1. Addiction and Medical Negligence. See, wealth and VIP access don't actually guarantee safety. In fact, they so often lead to deadly medical isolation. Let's talk about propofol. It is a powerful surgical anesthetic. It is strictly not meant for home use. Yet for weeks leading up to June 25, 2009, 50-year-old Michael Jackson's personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, essentially performed bedroom surgery every single night. Jackson was desperate for sleep ahead of his massive This Is It tour, so he was given IV drips of what he called his milk. Dr. Murray administered this heavy anesthetic without proper monitoring or even emergency equipment. That afternoon, Jackson suffered acute propofol intoxication, leading to an internet-crashing death at 2:26 p.m. and ultimately a manslaughter conviction for Dr. Murray. And there's often this massive, jarring contrast between the public narrative we're fed and the grim medical reality. On August 16, 1977, the whole world was told that 42-year-old Elvis Presley died of a heart attack. Case closed, right? But the autopsy revealed a vastly different story. The king had a massively enlarged colon and suffered from severe chronic constipation, literally the result of thousands of pills prescribed by his personal physician, Dr. George Nicopolis. So the medical reality here is that Elvis tragically died from a drug-induced Valsalva maneuver. That means intense physical exertion while straining on a Graceland toilet, which triggered a fatal cardiac arrhythmia. Now, consider this absolutely haunting timeline from February 11th, 2012. At the Beverly Hilton Hotel, 48-year-old Whitney Houston drew a bath filled with scalding hot water, over 93 degrees. Because she had cocaine and prescription medications in her system, she was simply too intoxicated to feel the pain or pull herself out when she slipped beneath the water. By 3:35 p.m., her assistant found her unresponsive. But here's the really dark irony of this whole tragedy. That exact same evening, just hours after her death, Clive Davis's legendary pre-Grammy party continued right downstairs in the ballroom. Guests were literally toasting champagne in the very same building where one of history's greatest voices had just lost her battle with heart disease and addiction. Which brings us to fentanyl. It's a synthetic opioid that is 50 times stronger than regular heroin. To put that into perspective, just a tiny, microscopic amount can be lethal. And this brings us to 57-year-old Prince. On April 21st, 2016, Prince was suffering from severe, chronic hip pain from years of those incredibly athletic stage performances. Seeking relief, he unknowingly took counterfeit Viking pills that had been illegally pressed with lethal fentanyl. Because of this, he was tragically discovered unresponsive in a Paisley Park elevator at 9:43 a.m. He became a high-profile victim of a counterfeit pill crisis that, honestly, has only gotten worse since then. Section 2. Tragic aviation and vehicle crashes. So, we've seen the devastating effects of medical negligence and addiction, but let's shift gears and see how this builds into sudden, shocking accidents driven by impatience and just tragic chance. Notice the sheer youth in these tragedies. Richie Valens, just 17 years old in Iowa, Ozzy Osbourne's revolutionary 25-year-old guitarist Randy Rhoads in Florida, and R&B superstar Aaliyah, only 22, down in the Bahamas. In every single one of these cases, their unbelievably bright futures were wiped out by a single point of failure in the cockpit, whether it was an impaired pilot, a bad storm, or a dangerously overloaded aircraft. That's the first time I've ever won anything in my life. Man, that quote holds a crushing, tragic irony. During the freezing, absolutely miserable 1959 winter dance party tour, 17-year-old Richie Valens desperately wanted a seat on a small plane just to escape those grueling, freezing bus rides. He actually begged a guitarist named Tommy Allsup for his spot. They flipped a coin. Valens called heads, won the seat, and happily delivered that exact line. But just minutes into the flight, the pilot became disoriented in a snowstorm, and that simple coin flip inadvertently secured Valens's doom in an Iowa cornfield, a tragedy we now forever remember as the day the music died. The turning point of this entire next tragedy really comes down to one single number: 700. On August 25, 2001, Aaliyah and her team had just wrapped up the Rock the Boat music video. Nobody wanted to wait around for a larger aircraft, so they just booked a smaller Cessna. But when it took off, that plane was exactly 700 pounds over its maximum capacity, all because of heavy video equipment and luggage. But it wasn't just the weight that brought the plane down. It was this complete systemic cascade of negligence. The pilot, Luis Morales III, had cocaine and alcohol in his system. He lied about his qualifications and didn't even have the proper certification for that specific Cessna. On top of that, the aircraft had completely questionable maintenance records. Aaliyah was fresh off filming the Matrix sequels, literally at the absolute peak of her career. But because her team was impatient, and absolutely every single safety check was violated, the plane crashed just 200 feet from the runway, killing all 9 people instantly. Something's coming. Something's wrong. Those were the haunting feelings shared by 30-year-old TLC star Lisa Left Eye Lopez. Weeks before her death, Lisa was a passenger in a van that hit and killed a 10-year-old boy down in Honduras. She was completely devastated and genuinely felt a dark curse or spirit was following her. She viewed that little boy's death as a direct warning. Tragically, on April 25, 2002, while swerving to avoid another vehicle, her Mitsubishi Montero SUV rolled over. She died instantly. And incredibly, her final moments were actually captured on the rolling documentary cameras she had brought along to document her spiritual journey. Section 3. Victims of Senseless Violence. Now, we really need to step away from the private jets, the fancy hotel rooms, and the music industry pressures to ground this explainer in the raw fragility of everyday life. Contrast all those previous celebrity choices we just talked about with the story of Sophie Lancaster. She was just 20 years old. She wasn't dealing with prescription drug addictions or overloaded private planes. She was simply going to a festival, reaching for beauty, trying to be part of a community. But she was attacked and beaten to death by teenage boys simply because of her subculture appearance. Sophie's tragic story is a harsh reminder. It proves that you don't always need to live a risky, high-profile lifestyle to have your life taken away. It highlights the sheer fragility of human life and the devastating, irreversible impact of senseless violence. Section 4. A Fragile Legacy. So whether it's the dizzying heights of global fame or just a walk through a local festival, all of these stories are bound together by ignored red flags and the incredibly delicate nature of life itself. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Which of these warning signs are we still ignoring today? Think about it. These aren't just sensational tabloid stories for us to gawk at. They are clear, structured warnings about the counterfeit pill crisis, the devastating consequences of medical and aviation negligence, and the undeniable fragility of life. That every safeguard matters, and that ignoring the red flags always comes with a cost. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this breakdown valuable, please subscribe for more deep dives and drop a comment below. Let me know, out of all of these, which story hit you the hardest.